Hollywood marriages aren't supposed to last. Fame, temptation, pressure, they usually crack under the weight. But somehow Mark Harmon did the impossible. While relationships around him collapsed in public, his didn't. And years later, he quietly admitted something that stopped fans in their tracks. It wasn't about fame, success, or even his legendary career. It was about one woman and a choice he made when everything else was pulling him the other way. Because behind the image of Hollywood's perfect couple is a story most people never heard. A story of walking away at the peak, protecting a family at all costs, and defying everything this town says can't work. And once you hear what really held this marriage together, you'll understand why Mark Harmon never looked back. Hollywood's perfect couple wasn't what it seemed. In the 1980s, Hollywood crowned a new power couple almost every year. But few shined as brightly as Mark Harmon and Pam Dawber. They were young, famous, and everywhere. Magazine covers, industry parties, endless speculation about how long it would last. But something about them never quite fit the usual Hollywood pattern. While other celebrity couples leaned into attention, Mark and Pam quietly pulled back. No oversharing. No carefully staged appearances. No public drama. The more famous they became, the less they revealed. To outsiders, that silence looked like confidence. To insiders, it felt deliberate, almost protective. And as the years passed, fans began to notice something strange. This it couple wasn't behaving like one at all. They weren't chasing headlines. They weren't selling their love story. They were doing the opposite. And that raised a question few dared to ask at the time. What were they protecting, and why? Because long before marriage, long before children, and long before anyone called them Hollywood's most stable couple, Pam Dawber was fighting battles no spotlight could fix, and that part of her story changes everything. Pam Dawber's lowest point before Mark. Long before her name became synonymous with stability and grace, Pam Dawber was quietly unraveling behind the scenes. From the outside, her life still looked enviable. She had fame, recognition, and a career most actors only dream of. But when Mork and Mindy came to an end, the rhythm she had relied on disappeared almost overnight. The phone rang less, momentum slowed, and with that silence came doubt, the kind that creeps in when applause fades and you're left alone with your thoughts. That career uncertainty collided with something far more personal. Pam was still grieving the loss of her only sister, a trauma that reshaped how she viewed everything, relationships, success, even time itself. It wasn't just sadness, it was disorientation. The feeling that the ground beneath you had shifted and nothing felt secure anymore. Her romantic life during that period offered little relief. She later described those years as a string of relationships that simply didn't work, not explosive, not scandalous, just empty. The kind that promises comfort but delivers more confusion. Each one chipped away at her confidence, reinforcing the fear that something meaningful might never last in a world built on temporary things. Rather than rushing into the next distraction, Pam did something rare in Hollywood. She stopped chasing. She took a step back and turned inward. Therapy helped her confront patterns she didn't want to repeat, and slowly she began rebuilding her sense of self, not as a star, but as a person who knew exactly what she would and wouldn't accept anymore. That's when she made a list, not a playful wish list, but a serious one. Strength without ego, intelligence without arrogance. Independence paired with sensitivity, warmth, humor, someone grounded, someone who didn't need the spotlight to feel whole. At the time, it felt almost unrealistic, especially in Hollywood. What Pam didn't know was that the man who fit every one of those qualities wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't chasing attention, and he wasn't interested in playing games. And when he finally stepped into her life, it didn't feel dramatic. It felt inevitable. Mark Harmon's unusual promise. While Pam Dawber was rebuilding herself quietly, Mark Harmon was navigating Hollywood from a completely different angle. By the mid-80s, he had everything the industry rewards: leading man looks, serious credibility, even the kind of public attention most actors chase for a lifetime. Yet behind that success was a mindset that didn't match the image at all. At the height of his popularity, Mark said something that made insiders pause. When asked about marriage, he didn't joke or deflect. He said that when he married, he wanted it to be everything Hollywood insists can't last. No games, no revolving doors, no public mess. It wasn't a romantic soundbite, it was a boundary. Unlike many of his peers, Mark wasn't interested in the constant social circuit. He wasn't known for chasing headlines or being seen in the right places. Friends noticed that while others leaned into the lifestyle, Mark pulled away from it. Fame was something he worked within, not something he built his life around. That attitude shaped how he approached relationships too. He wasn't dating for attention, he wasn't collecting experiences, he was waiting, whether he realized it or not, for something that felt solid enough to last when the noise died down. So when his path finally crossed with Pam Dawber's, it wasn't about timing or chemistry alone, it was about alignment. Two people, both wary of what Hollywood does to love, meeting at a moment when neither of them was willing to settle for anything temporary. And once that connection sparked, Mark didn't hesitate. He did something almost unheard of in that world. He went straight for what he wanted. The night everything locked into place. Hollywood loves dramatic meet-cute stories, but the way Mark Harmon and Pam Dawber met was surprisingly simple. No red carpets, no spotlight moment, just a party hosted by a mutual friend in the spring of 1986. The kind of gathering where famous people drift in and out, half present, already planning their exits. They noticed each other almost immediately, not in a flashy way, but in that quiet, unmistakable way where something just clicks. Friends sensed it too. In fact, it's been said that the introduction wasn't accidental at all, a subtle setup by someone who believed these two might actually work. And they did, instantly. When it came time to ask Pam out, Mark didn't overthink it. There was no entourage, no elaborate plan. He asked for her number, he called, and when he reached her answering machine, he started leaving a message suggesting something casual, maybe coffee, nothing complicated. Halfway through, she picked up. That same night, they went out. No waiting, no rules. From that moment on, they were rarely apart. There was no on-again, off-again phase, no guessing games. Friends noticed how quickly things shifted from new to serious. It wasn't rushed, it was certain. Because when you've both lived through disappointment, hesitation feels pointless, and Mark knew it. Pam felt it. What followed moved faster than anyone in their circles expected. The secret wedding Hollywood never saw. Once Mark Harmon and Pam Dawber committed, there was no slow burn. Within months of meeting, they were engaged. A pace that would normally send Hollywood insiders whispering warnings. But they weren't worried about optics. They were focused on something far more important, keeping what they had untouched by the noise outside. Instead of moving in together right away or staging a public announcement, they made a choice that confused almost everyone around them. They stayed discreet, separate homes, no press rollout, no interviews selling the romance. And behind the scenes, they were already planning something even more unexpected, a wedding almost no one would know about. Pam, in particular, was firm about one thing. She had seen what publicity could do to a marriage before it even began. Celebrity weddings turned into spectacles, helicopters overhead, cameras everywhere. A moment that should feel sacred suddenly belonged to everyone else. She didn't want that, not even a little. So they did the unthinkable in Hollywood. They kept it secret. No big venue, no exclusive photos, no advance notice. When they finally exchanged vows in March of 1987, it happened quietly, surrounded only by close family and trusted friends. The location itself said everything, personal, meaningful, and deliberately off the celebrity map. By the time the public found out, it was already done. No build-up, no countdown, just a married couple who had slipped past the machine without asking permission. But that wasn't the boldest decision they would make together, because shortly after, Pam Dawber would choose something even more radical, walking away from the very fame that made her a star. Why Pam Dawber quietly walked away from fame. From the outside, Pam Dawber's decision confused people. She was still in demand. Offers were there. Her name carried weight. But behind closed doors, something had shifted. Fame no longer felt like forward movement. It felt like noise. And once children entered the picture, that feeling only grew stronger. Pam wasn't interested in doing everything halfway. She didn't want to squeeze motherhood between call times or miss milestones because a schedule said she had to. She wanted to be present, not occasionally, not symbolically, but fully. School mornings, birthdays, the small moments most people don't think about until they're gone. What made her choice even more unusual was how openly she acknowledged the risk Hollywood relationships face. She didn't sugarcoat it. She believed that two people constantly chasing careers in the same high-pressure industry could quietly erode a marriage, and she wasn't willing to let that happen. Not to her family, not to what she and Mark had built. So she stepped back, not with bitterness, not with regret, with intention. While Mark's career surged forward, Pam became the foundation that allowed everything else to function. She managed the home, She protected their privacy. She made sure their children grew up grounded, not consumed by the world their parents lived in. Mark never pretended he did it alone. Over the years, he's consistently acknowledged that her presence, steady, unshaken, and unseen by the public, made his success possible. What looked like absence to the outside world was in reality a sacrifice few were willing to make, and that sacrifice shaped more than just their marriage. Because when it came to protecting their children, Mark and Pam drew a line Hollywood rarely respects, and they never crossed it. The family test that almost changed everything. For all the care Mark Harmon and Pam Dawber took to shield their private life, one painful chapter slipped into the public eye, and it tested their marriage earlier than most people realize. Not long after their wedding, the couple found themselves facing a deeply personal family situation that had no easy answers. Concerns had surfaced about the well-being of Mark's young nephew. According to reports at the time, Mark and Pam believed stepping in might offer the child a more stable environment. It wasn't a decision made lightly, and it wasn't driven by control or publicity. It came from worry, the kind that forces families into impossible choices. What followed became public far quicker than they ever wanted. Court proceedings, headlines, speculation. Suddenly, their quiet life was being dissected by people who knew nothing about the emotional weight behind it. The stress landed right on a marriage that was still finding its footing. In the end, Mark and Pam made a choice that spoke volumes about who they were. They stepped back. No drawn-out fight, no public justification, just a silent decision to remove themselves from a situation that had become more damaging than helpful. It was a defining moment. Not because of how it ended, but because of what it revealed. A couple willing to absorb disappointment, misunderstanding, and even criticism rather than let conflict tear their family apart. And through all of it, one thing remained consistent. When life pushed hardest, they didn't turn outward. They turned toward each other. What Mark Harmon finally admitted. Years later, after the fame settled and the noise faded, Mark Harmon revealed something quietly telling. He spoke about why he always wears a ring, even when he's not working, even when no one is watching. Not out of habit, out of pride. Pride in being married, pride in who he married. It was never about grand gestures or public declarations. Their love story wasn't built for headlines. It was built in choices, choosing privacy over applause, family over momentum, and commitment over convenience. While Hollywood chased the next big moment, Mark and Pam focused on something far rarer, staying the same people when everything around them tried to change them. That's the part most people missed. The secret wasn't luck, it wasn't timing, it was intention. Two people deciding, again and again, that what they had was worth protecting, even if it meant walking away from things others would never give up. And maybe that's why their story still stands out, not because it was perfect, but because it was real, in a place where real rarely survives.